Hey everybody, it's Irene with BrainStormAcres, and as you can see, today I'm in the garden. Now the reason I'm in the garden today is because I want to talk about some important fall cleanup issues. Now this was we called it our bucket garden, or Isa's jungle. And it was a whole collection of buckets, 10-gallon buckets, that had various vegetables in it. We still have Brussels sprouts here. We're experimenting. We may ditch those soon. But the only other thing that's left out here right now is our carrots. And our carrots are still here because there's nothing wrong with them. They're not fazed by this cold weather, and we're just harvesting them as we need them. So that does mean I need to water them by hand. That's a minor inconvenience for the wonderful aspect of having fresh carrots during the winter. But you'll notice if you've been watching us for a while, the other day I really cleaned this place up. I took up all the weeds, the dead leaves, everything. Now, this plant here is continuing to drop some flowers, and we're having trouble with a squirrel. And a squirrel is coming in and cutting off flowers and leaves and all that kind of stuff, which is why this looks kind of weird right now. And that squirrel is going to have to go because they're doing a lot of damage around the yard. I've seen them a couple of times. I think I know where I can find them. Unfortunate, but as long as you stay outside my fence, you're good. You come in here, we'll have to have a conversation. So, part of the cleanup is removing leaves and stuff. Now, I was actually seeing a thing the other day that was saying, oh, don't rake up your leaves in the fall, and don't do this and don't do that. Okay, here's my thought on that. Some places that you live, if you don't rake up your leaves, the leaves will form such a matted mass that they will actually kill your lawn. For most people in a suburban environment who've worked hard to keep their lawn alive, this is not a good thing. What we used to do when we lived in Massachusetts, when we had a ton, I mean like 5 or 6 maple leaves in our yard, counting front and backyard, we would rake them up. You had the option of putting them out for the compost people who would come around and pick up once a week. But what we did is we piled them up in our own backyard, and we made this wonderful, wonderful leaf mulch compost, which we then proceeded to use on our garden. I also did cover things loosely, now that's a important word there. I covered my strawberries in the fall with loose leaves and created, like people would use a straw mulch, I created this mulch over the top of them, which means that they were protected somewhat from the weather, especially that swinging weather that you get sometimes in the middle of the winter. We don't have deciduous trees here. That means our trees do not lose their leaves. Everything that grows on our property, or pretty much everything, is an evergreen of some sort. That means we don't have leaves that are conveniently coming off in the fall and stuff. The only place we have leaves like that is in the garden. Now, people will say, oh, are you going to put all your vegetable plants in the compost? And the answer is no. Why? Because we don't run a hot compost here. We can't run a hot compost. It would take a lot more time, effort, and energy than we have right now, and water. In order to compost correctly in our environment, we are so dry most of the time that you would have to be watering the compost more than once a week, and you'd have to be adding all kinds of odd bits and pieces in order to make it work. We are just not going to do that right now. Will it happen someday? It could. I'm hoping it will. However, right now, no. In order for your vegetable plants to be used properly in your compost, your compost has to be getting hot, like 140 degrees or more. That's at the point at which it will bake out any of the funguses, kill the bug eggs, all that other kind of stuff. We don't achieve that heat here because our compost is not organized enough. We don't have enough green manure being put into it. That means green things. All we have is mostly brown things. And without the green, the brown will not do anything. We could add urea We have in the past in order to make the straw beds work. It's not something we're ready to do at this point in the development of our garden system. Right now we're just paying for compost. Not the ideal situation, but when you live in the desert, water can be more precious than anything else. And for us right now, it still is. We don't have our water collection systems well enough in place to make us be able to put down an inch or more of water a week all summer, and some during the winter a lot of times. Like we just had 4/10 of an inch of rain the other day. That's a really big deal for us, a really big deal. And a lot of times that doesn't happen. So that water is a precious commodity that we don't throw around casually. You won't find me putting my squash plants or my tomato plants or anything else like that into my compost pile. But what you will find me doing is when I clear those things out and they go into the burn pile, because that's where they are going to go, I will watch for bugs. So for instance, we're having a lot of shield bugs show up this year. And earlier this fall, I did a little video about using a can full of soapy water to collect them off of the asparagus plants, because for some reason they were just glomming on over there, and it was super easy to catch them there. I want to just physically remove them. I prefer not to spray if I don't have to. We do run this as a mostly organic garden. All of our sprays and things like that that we do use are organically certified, and we're very careful about using them so that we don't damage our pollinators. But this time of year, I remember when we lived in California, you start to get rain, and they would put out notifications, please check your yards for standing water. Especially with the increase in diseases that are transmitted by mosquitoes in the United States, things like Zika and stuff like that, we really need to make sure we're not breeding mosquitoes. So I watch. I have a couple more buckets over here that I need to dump. Most of the rest of the yard is free of things other than the bird bath that will collect water on a regular basis. But we have a location where we actually collect water off of the studio roof. I love that spot because early season and late season, like right now I'm using it to water the perennials in here whenever we get too dry. So it's great. I'm not paying for it. It just comes off the roof. It's in the bucket, but it's got an open top to it, which means we now have critters in there. So let me go show you that. This is our little tank that we have by the studio. It just collects water, literally just it runs off and falls in here. And I normally use it to water the garlic and water whatever else needs to be watered during the winter here and in the early spring. If we get rain during the summer, I'll also use it during the summer, but it's not a reliable source of water. And this year in particularly, it was dry for a significant percentage of the summer. Well, now it's about that full of water, but it's also got something else living in it, and that's what I wanted to share. Mosquito larvae in here. It's actually not quite as many in here this morning as there were yesterday. But there are mosquito larvae in here. And I do not want mosquitoes hatching out. So I just finished talking about the fact that we like to keep it as natural as we can around here when it comes to bug control. Whenever possible, we just smash them by hand, or we physically remove them with a vacuum or some other means like that. Well, one of our main weapons in the summertime against things like cabbage loopers and other kind of caterpillars is BT. Now, BT simply stands for Bacillus thuringiensis, and there's a whole bunch of different kinds. And what I'm going to use to solve my mosquito problem is a thing called mosquito dunks. I don't know if there's any other brands. There probably are, but what this contains is the Bacillus thuringiensis, and then it's got some sort of grain, I think it is. Let's see. Basically, it says that 1 to 5 square feet, use a quarter of a dunk, 5 to 25, half a dunk. What we normally do is at the beginning of the season, we pop one of these out, and we just throw it in here, and it looks like a little donut. One of the things I like about this is alternative wetting and drying will not reduce their effectiveness. So what happens is, if this container goes dry, the stuff just sits there like in hibernation, and then when it gets wet again, it comes out. But the Bacillus thuringiensis, the BT, it kills the mosquitoes, but it doesn't harm anything. So if a bird were to drink this water, or for some reason the cat fell into it, she hasn't, but I have had previous cats that have fallen in because they thought it was a good idea to walk on the edge and then fall in. That was funny. I wish I'd had a video. A very upset cat. And it's not deep enough for them to drown. They can always get out, but they were very unhappy with life at that moment. Probably by tomorrow, all the mosquito larvae in here will be gone. And that's an important concept. You know, whether it's heartworm or Zika or some other nasty thing, you really need to control mosquitoes on your property. The easiest way to do that most of the time is to simply dump out things. But this is precious water, and I'm still using it to water my perennials. So dumping it out is really a bad solution for us. I hope you find this interesting. It's an easy, quick solution. I get these at like a big box store. I think this, to mention a company, I believe these came from Home Depot. They are good for a long period of time. They don't really, I mean, I suppose they might expire after 10 years or something like that, but they say that it kills mosquito larvae for 30 days or more. Well, if it dries out in between, it's just sitting there like in hibernation, waiting for the water to come back. Have we ever had to put in more than one in the summertime? Yeah, there were a couple of summers where it got really wet and we had large quantities of water and this overflowed. Then we would need to just simply replace it because it was kind of used up. And you'll see these things will gradually disintegrate. It looks like a donut floating in the water right now. These are not that expensive. I want to say maybe $6 or $8 for a pack of 6. These will last you for years. I just keep them clean and dry and in with the rest of my pesticides and stuff like that, and they're just there for when I need them. So hopefully this helps you guys. It's important to be aware of what's going in your garden even when it's no longer really gardening season. You need to be aware of whether some of your downed plants and stuff, if you pick them up and there's bugs under there, well, what is it? If it's a ladybug, that's awesome. But more likely it's going to be a stink bug or a shield bug or some other thing that you really don't want. I mean, I'm delighted when I dig something up and I find a worm, but that's not a bug. I'm delighted when I see a ladybug. She may make it or not. But I don't want to overwinter pests, because then the second it gets warm in the spring, they're waiting for you. And as soon as your plants are out there, whether you've started them from seed or whether they're coming up by themselves, they'll be ready to chew on them. So be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, because we're always looking out for you guys and we're always trying to help you guys grow a better garden and learn all kinds of handy things about working on a homestead and living out in a new environment. Or even if it's not such a new environment, sometimes people just don't think about these things until they're wondering why it's late October. I mean, we've been freezing at night. It was 31 degrees last night. There was frost on everything this morning. But we still have a bunch of healthy mosquito larvae in here, which if we get a couple of nice warm days, will be mosquitoes. So, not a good thing. So until next time, bye, and keep brainstorming. That's how you outwit those bugs, you know.